Harlan, are you there?
I am here.
What
Can you
is
hear
your
me?
thoughts here? Yeah, what is your thoughts here? We just popped back up on the S&P futures. We're hanging out, and then we got Draghi speaking, and he just said they're going to get more stimulus potentially over in Europe, and the market's loving it.
Super Mario.
Super Mario.
The Super
Super
Mario
Mario.
Brothers. I mean, come on. Haven't you ever played those games?
Oh, I love Super Mario Brothers back in the day. I was like Super Mario 3, that was like the game, man. You go find those whistles. That was an awesome game.
I don't know
Yeah,
about
well,
that.
that's
I
that's
don't.
about where we're
This
at.
is after
You know,
Joel's time of video
isn't
games.
it crazy? Isn't it crazy how policy now is let's just shoot our mouth off and say we're going to do this or talk about this. Look at was it Bullard down at the 1820 talking about the U.S. Our Fed doing potential QE, and that's what sent us flying. So talk is policy now. Crazy.
It surely is. I mean, that was echoed in what happened last Thursday with over in Japan here. But Harlan, I know you've been on the sidelines a little bit here, a little bit of cash. Yeah, you feel like you're missing out on the rally.
No, not really so much. Only because we trade what we see based on our methodology, and a big part of our methodology is buying stocks in clearly defined uptrends that are pulling back off their highs to a support level. And when you got the V of all times, it was pretty hard to find stocks that were actually staging decent pullback off highs patterns for us. So, but we're starting to see some things, crop up. Actually, I'm seeing things on both sides of the market. So, it's a market of stocks if you want to go there. The indexes, they do, we're sitting and spinning, the last 3-4 days up in this zone. So, we're going to find out if Super Mario is going to be put a floor under the market for the day. But that doesn't take away from a lot of stocks still being extended. That doesn't take away from a lot of stocks that have clearly broken down, and all they've done is come right back up to resistance levels. So when you look underneath the surface, technically speaking, there's a lot out there that's sorting itself out. Money's going to rotate out of the most extended, and last cycle's leaders, next cycle's laggards. You see what they're doing to these the go-go names of 6 months ago. They're just killing them.
Yeah.
So so now we're looking for a new crop, and who is that new crop? That's just it. There is some decent looking stocks out there, but there's also some pretty ugly stuff out there. So
We were talking yesterday on the show about this movement, exactly what you're talking about there, Harlan, this movement from the growth stocks into more of the value stocks. We looked at like Berkshire Hathaway making new highs, which is your best value stock indicator. Looked at stocks like Procter & Gamble, looked at stocks like Johnson & Johnson, all of these things making new all-time highs recently. Do you think that could be the next like the value stocks are going to be propelling us higher?
Well, just look at the name Johnson & Johnson, Procter & Gamble. To me, I hear those names, I start thinking, that's defensive. So, if these defensive names are really, starting to move, somebody out there is making a stand, by, starting to buy those names up. So, it just, we used to see it in the past, when the defensive issues used to start to take off, watch out. It's just another bullet point as to, maybe other areas of the market are in trouble.
Yeah,
so
not
at least
only
that's the way it used to be.
it wasn't only Procter & Gamble, Johnson & Johnson. I was looking at all the stocks making new highs, a lot of utility stocks like DT Energy. I think Southern was on there. Duke Energy was a few days ago. I've seen stocks even like Waste Management, also seeing some of the tobacco stocks like Reynolds, also Philip Morris and Altria. So a lot of defensive stocks, you're right, we're making new highs.
And what are the Harlan? Just could you go into delve a little bit more into that? What are the implications for that when you see people going defensive?
To me, it just raises a red flag on the overall climate. It's nothing to go out there and react on. It's just an observation that I've always been brought up to understand that, hey, when they start moving defensive issues, because people got to eat and people, like in Johnson and Johnson's, people got to clean out their ears. So, people do have to eat, and, that is pretty much why you start to see a bid get caught, because they tend to weather a storm due to, an economic slowdown.
Well, Harlan, what are your thoughts here on Disney tonight? Do you have any thoughts on this stock here? It's going to report it's had the real run up there since the lows back in the Ebola scare when we got down to $78. And we're all kind of sitting and waiting to hear what Disney's got to say tonight, but it's been on a pretty extended run. Are you playing this one at all?
No, I'm not. But I like Joel's story.
Oh, did you hear his little boating story?
I did. I took those boats out too when I was around 11 years old.
Those things were fun, but
anyway, yeah, they were. Yeah.
All right, let's go to some of the momos, and boy, let's look at Twitter here. And is the uptrend been broken? It's got to be. You're probably not going to touch this one because it's trading below the 50 and the 200-day. You're not going to try and lean on this 40 low. How's that for reading Harlan's mind?
Pretty good, actually, at least on the long side. On the long side, I'm not. It doesn't have the pattern that I'm looking for. But line up your, go back to the May lows from current day. Actually, the May lows are awesome because, when you look at the beginning of May, it just went straight down, late April, early May. And then it did a little bounce up, and then it pulled back off its highs. To retest those lows in May. So one could say you had kind of a little double bottom with a pullback there. If I see that, and then it took off, obviously, at the end of May. If I see that show up for Twitter, then I'll get interested in Twitter on the long side. But, line up your lows from the late May all the way through, let's say September, let's say October. You clearly broke that whole big picture uptrend.
What about Facebook? What do you think of Facebook there? Because it's actually been trying to form some type of a bottom the last few days. A lot of lows there in the 73, 70 area. What are your thoughts here? It's obviously had the weakness after the report, and it's trying to form some type of base here the last 3 or 4 days.
Well, it sure doesn't like the 50-day moving average. It comes up, after it got slammed, it tagged the 50-day moving average, chewed around a little bit, and then yesterday, see what it did? Came up, looked at a retest of the highs from 5-6 days ago, which is also the 50-day moving average, and turned tail. So short term, there's a little bit of resistance there. But bigger picture, if you line up your tops from, let's just call it beginning of September, and then line up those lows, you have a broadening top on this stock. So, bigger picture, that's what I'm seeing. But yet, you know what? There's really no pattern for a person like me to work off of. In fact, I can build a case for the last 5-6 days being some sort of we got slammed and now we're just going sideways. And, if you break to the downside, you're probably going to touch 70, which is another, support zone. So I'm just not seeing a pattern that's going to give me any sort of oomph with any degree of confidence.
What else are you looking at, Harlan? There's got to be a few longs out there that you're itching to look at. What do you got on your radar?
A couple things. I like Baidu on a pullback. And, that's one name that broke out of a fresh, 3-month plus base. So, old resistance, once broken, tends to become new support. So in terms of market weakness, when you see market weakness and you see a name like Baidu come back and take a look at, let's just call it 230, the 230 level, that's a support zone there. And then there's another one, I'm going to call it about 2.25. So if you're one that doesn't like to chase stocks, and one that likes to allow them to come to you at lower risk alternative entry points via pullbacks, as long as the trend is still intact, That's one name to keep an eye on. And another name, one could say VIPS, although earnings are due on the 10th, VIPS.
Mm-hmm.
Here's another name. It broke out 23 into a new high, and boom, instant reversal, because it was short-term extended to begin with. 21, 22, we've got some support there too, which means it would come back into the so-called big picture base, but again, it's above the 50-day moving average. Another one, Zoe's, Z-O-E-S. Zoe's Kitchen, remember we talked about this a couple weeks ago. Doesn't look that bad. Broke out of one could say a cup with a very small handle, ran up. If you chased it, you got nothing to show for it. But here it is right back down in that 35 zone with good support in the 33 zone. So there is stuff out there that is setting up.
What about some potential shorts out there?
Yeah, I knew you were going there. Well, there are things that are triggering. XONE, if you can take a look at that off the October lows, all it did come right back up to resistance at the, I'm going to call it 27 zone, and, that's the pattern you're looking for. All they do is they broke down and came back up into overhead supply resistance, and boom, started to roll right over.
Well,
of course, I think that one has a little bit to do with SSYS, who, didn't Strasis get hammered yesterday?
Yeah, they had some bad numbers. What about
birds of a feather?
Yep, flock together. How about an Herbalife? Have you been trading that, Harlan?
No. I mean, when you have all those guys,
Headline stock.
Right, flexing all that, testosterone, egos, back and forth. I'm like, you guys can play by yourself. But here's another good example. Off the September lows, you see how it did a snapback rally, bigger picture bear channel all through the month of October. Sure enough, there's that pattern again. So, trade what you see, and when you start seeing bear channels, pull back off lows patterns show up, you know which way you need to lean, technically speaking.
And how about some of these solar stocks here? Some decent numbers out of Solar City. But Hurt Capital is asking about TSL and then Canadian Solar. Let's look at Canadian Solar first, CSIQ.
Solar City, by the way, which we'll come back to, is exactly what here's another one. You hit a low, October, and what's it done? All it's done is do a snapback rally, ABC, what I call a pullback off its lows, short sell setup. That's it. Now, what if this thing comes back and retests the November 1st highs? Is that November 1st or end of October?
Let me take a look here. See.
That's 33 zone. If it comes back up there and retests that and it can't get through it, first off, that's a resistance zone. It's also below the 50-day moving average. So, if you take everything from the October lows through present day, that's a bear channel pulled back off lows.
Yeah, I see you getting a little pop here. I'd say if you are trading this from the long side and it cuts through the 28.70 level, you could easily see yourself back at $28.
Or even a retest of the lows.
I just want to
look at Solar City, SCTY. Same pattern. Fell off the face of the earth, and all it could do is snapback rally, ABC up, right up to 50-day moving average, and said, see you later, goodbye.
I'm looking at that TSL. I just want to go back to that one there, Joel, for a second here too, because there is some significant size in the book, just under $10. I'm looking at the New York book, 27,000 shares bid at 10, 100,000 shares at 999, 100,000 shares at 997, bidding at 997, 75,000 more at 993. So all kinds of bids around that $10 level, and I think that's why every time this thing gets down near $10, it seems to bounce.
Yep. Now, if it gets down at that level, and all of a sudden those bids disappear, were they real? Was it live or was it Memorex?
And this is something to consider, Harlan. This is something that I talk about, and I don't know if you've heard me talk about this on the show before, though. But when you look at the book, at 8:30 in the morning, it tends to be much more real than if you look at the book at 9:30 in the morning. When the 9:30 in the morning, it's all high frequency traders in there, and it's all fluff, and it's all basically not real bids. It's all envelope orders. There's a
Yeah.
lot of other stuff going on. But when you look at
Right.
that book
It's kind of
at
like watching the
7:30 in the
Globex
morning,
futures in the middle of the night.
you're right. There's no fluff in there, and I would probably bank. I'm not going to say nothing's 100%. You can cancel any orders. Any institution can cancel those orders. But I bet you, just because there's so many lows on the charts around 10, I see that size in there. You add those two things up, and those orders are probably real.
There you go.
Okay, Harlan,
But overall, it's still got that pattern that, you know what, this isn't really a market leader here. None of these are.
Okay.
So if you're looking for good stuff, only the best and forget the rest, start to look at the names that are showing strength that are in clearly defined uptrends above the 50-day moving average. That's where you want to find the leadership.
Okay, Harlan Pyan, all about trends, our regular Thursday cast on Benzinga's pre-market prep, brought to you by Market 5. S&Ps just hit a fresh high. Harlan, 202650. Thanks for coming on. We always enjoy your input. We'll speak to you next week.
Thanks, guys. See you later.
Thanks, Harlan.